Hello, friends. It was another tough week here at the Goat Lake, but we managed to end on a very high note. Welcome to McFarland's Corner. I'm Michael McFarland, your host. In today's episode, we are going to discuss the topic, the diving loon, the fish-eating loon bird, and how it can offer important and valuable information to us, the fishermen. Before we do, let's go into the journal as usual and tell you a little more detail about McFarland Fishing, the Lake Fork Guide, and how the week went. And really, before we do that, let me clarify what I mean by Goat Lake, greatest of all times. Much like the NFL football player Tom Brady, which I believe is where the GOAT came from, the repetitive Super Bowls, etc. It's one of the greatest of all times. Well, that's the way I look at Lake Fork. Not because it's fishing the best in 2017 or 2020. No, Sam Rayburn right now is on fire. 2019 it was on fire. Right now it just put out a 40-pound BFL sack. And 2 weeks later, a week later, a 50-pound record-breaking Texas Teams trails. 5-fish bag. Does that make it all of a sudden the Goat Lake? No, it means it's one of the season cycles of bass fishing that right now it's reaping the benefits from Mother Fork. Lake Fork is where this all began, if you will. The Share Lunker program, the birth of the big bass, and the whole program starts right here at Lake Fork. Not to mention that 54 of the top 75 largest bass in Texas come from Lake Fork, thus making it the Goat Lake, greatest, undeniably, of all times. So, anyways, that clarifies that. That's really what I mean. Fishing's fishing. I've been in places, the Black River when I was a child, you could spit in the water and smallmouth bass would come take a look at your spit. By the time I was in my 20s, it was a tough fishery. Pressure, conditions, Mother Nature, things change. Cycles, age, etc. Lake Fork, don't let it fool you. It's a tough, tough, tough place. But I promise you that it can be the most rewarding and it's still very healthy. Nothing wrong with the lake. No lack of fish whatsoever. Some things have changed. No grass, less grass, etc. A little new evolution in the fish. They're forced to re-evolve in their lake, but they're still there. So let's tell you about it. Undeniably, the Goat Lake. Our week started off very slow, folks. Water temperatures ranging from 49.7 to 52.1. Big winds, which just churned up lake, really didn't allow the lake to even warm up when we were having warmer weather, latter part of the week. We had some really nice days, Friday, Saturday. Got hot enough to take everything off, almost down to t-shirts, but it was pretty good wind. And it was white capping and wasn't letting the body, the main lake, warm up. I'm certain that the backwaters, northern pockets, were getting warmed up. But overall, it was a tough week. The water clarity changed just a tiny bit throughout the week. The high winds turned some mud, turned the water from that Lake Fork green in areas to a little bit of stain. It's not bad. One gate being opened has pulled some dirt down from those northern creeks. Again, even the creeks themselves were never that muddy in the first place. So it's not bad. We had about 6 inches of rain 2 weeks back. It came in very docile, if you will. It came light, came coming, but it didn't come in heavy vial, didn't make it flow, and it did not really muddy up the lake too bad. So you know, the water is good. Really, actually, I like it. My favorite thing is to say Lake Fork green or gunmetal blue. One of those two colors, and Lake Fork's healthy, and you should be catching fish. Okay. How are we catching our fish? Well, basically, I'm choosing high percentage areas. I'm not going to break out a diagram today. That may help explain what I mean. It's not necessarily just a long point. It's not a hump. It's not a creek mouth. But it's all of those things. Potentially, it's anything that the bass can pull up on when they're first coming back in from offshore. Right now, the cesspool is offshore in the deeper water, in the deep creek. I literally call it no man's land. Sometimes just flat suspending way out there in no man's land. They're really hard to find. There's so much trees, it's a needle in a haystack. Even if you find them, you can't catch them because everything's together. I mean, everything is together. Crappie, catfish, carp, bass, everything's just in a cesspool. It's the only place to be in the coldest part of winter. So they really get cesspooled out there. But as it comes back in, those first places that those bait fish pull up on, the first places that those bass pull back up onto, is where I'm spending the majority of our time. It's paying off. We're camping in these areas. A critical thing to share with you is that's very difficult to spend 2 or 3 or 4 hours in the same spot making the same exact cast. And then choosing that spot is really critical. You don't want to put the boat in the way. Like deer hunting, you don't want to put your tree stand in the way of where they're coming from. So you got to understand and know a little bit more of the lake, know how these fish move in and out. Put the boat accordingly. A lot of times I will also, just for flavor, to help stop the boreism, if that's a word, you get bored throwing the same cast, is just change the angle a little. It never hurts to change the angle sometimes on the fish. Sometimes that can make them bite. But the biggest thing is camping. Spending quality time in the right spots has paid off. Throughout the week, we started to grab some fish. The previous week, I went trying to solve the puzzle. I went throwing a handful, junk fishing with a whole bunch of things, thinking that maybe I could grasp some fish or find something in the backwater that would be a pattern that I could replicate throughout the lake. They haven't come in yet. With the warm trend, cool trend, the Texas two-step, in, out, in, out, in, out. So this movement is hard to judge when to be in, when to be out. You got to move in and out a lot. If you're a tournament fisherman, that's what you should be doing. Cold out, warm in. But I want the slots. I want the big fish. They ain't come in yet. I'm staying in high percentage spot. It makes the most sense for me. All right, and it's paying off. Mr. Reese, young man Reese, and his father. If you follow me on Facebook or Instagram, Lake Fork Adventures Guide Service on Facebook, you saw that young man Reese caught himself a couple nice Lake Fork specials. His dad had about a 4-pounder. Didn't quite make the Lake Fork special category. What I call Lake Fork specials, a 5 to 7 pounder. 7 to 10 pounder is a giant, and 7 to 9.15. And a 10 pounder double digit is a big and son. That's the monster. So 5 to 7 pounder is a Lake Fork special, and Reese got him a couple of those. And to many people, that's a fish of a lifetime. A 6 pounder is a trophy bass. From Lake Fork, it can be a common Lake Fork special. So great week. Thank you for all those that were with me. Thank you, Reese and your father, and the group there that we had that Saturday. Thanks all of you for grinding through a tough week. Sure enjoyed it, and looking forward to the next week. But let's keep going in the journal. We're still in the journal. Let's tell you how we caught the fish this week. Let's start first with the Texas rig, Cinco, or what I've been using is the V&M chopstick. I've been using it Okeechobee craw and then green pumpkin red flake on sunny days. What I do is I'm going to rig that up on lighter line. So I'm using this on that's Real-Time Rods MD73 1020s with McFarland's signatures added. What are those signatures? That's the microwave concept guide, the titanium tip, and on a solid handle, the shrink wrap around the grip. On the splits, we don't do the shrink. But you can add the McFarland's signature to any real-time rods. Anyways, what we're doing is I'm throwing 15-pound test. I'm throwing a 1/4 ounce tungsten pegged with a 4-odd offset hook, preferably a good quality hook. Gamakatsu owner, if you will. But believe me, even the H2O from Academy works if you just keep them fresh, don't let them rust, and don't overuse them. Don't reuse them too much. They do lose their points. But I'm using 15-pound Seaguar fluorocarbon. Now, that Seaguar tends to kind of have a lot of memory, so what I do is I change it weekly. As soon as it starts to act up, just change it. It's not a really high dollar or very overexpensive fluorocarbon like many of them are. There's a lot of fluorocarbons that are excellent. If I was tournament competing, I'd probably maybe move to some of the top Sunline brands. But again, I'd still be changing them a lot, and it would just cost that much more. So the Seaguar works just fine. I've never had any issues or breaks. So now we move to the jig. I'm basically throwing a Sandtone football jig, 3/4 ounce, 1 ounce. This is what Reese caught his biggest fish on, tipped with a Rage Craw green pumpkin or a pocket craw. This particular one right here is actually JC Craw, and Reese caught his fish on a black and blue. I've stepped up to 20-pound cigar fluorocarbon. Again, a real-time rod. This is going to be the MB73 1225 power. This is with my jig rod. I use this for a jig rod. It does have the added McFarland's signatures. Again, microwave concept guides, titanium tip. That's not micro guides. It's a microwave concept. There's 2 guides in one right here. It really, really tightens up the cast and makes it much smoother. You get a lot more distance out of every cast. But basically, this rod, and again, here's your split grip. So we do not add the shrink to the split grip. We found that that shrink just doesn't stay as well as it does on the solid. So that's the jig rod with the McFarland's signatures. The jig, again, the Sandtone 3/4 or 1 ounce black and blue football jig seems to be best. Caught the biggest fish this week. And then, of course, the Carolina rig. The Carolina rig is what I really depend on here, because real soon when that water in the main lake hits 54 degrees, 55 degrees, those gizzard shad move up on those shallow shells to start spawning. I'm going to get off of the creature baits. All right. Right now we're throwing brush hogs and lizards in basically watermelon seed with a chartreuse tail. And yes, that favorite new color. Somebody went on and spilled the beans, but it is huckleberry. I'll tell you what, huckleberry is going to catch some really big ones. We've already had a few big ones on it this week before it even got going. When it gets going, that's going to hurt some big bass. Huckleberry brush hog, watermelon seed lizard, and the brush hog and the watermelon seed on a Carolina rig. Now, as I just started to say, once those gizzard shad get up there, this is coming off. And I'm going to go to a 7-inch impact shad. I'm going to go to it in the green pumpkin magic red when the sun's shining. And we're going to throw that in 0. We put the boat in 8 feet of water and throw that whole rig. That's right, a 1 ounce Carolina rig, long leader in 0. And we're going to snatch it back to the boat like a jerk bait. Once them gizzard shad are spawning on them shell beds, it's a fun milk run, baby. It's a fun milk run. That's what we're doing. That's the gist of McFarland's Fishing Journal for the week of February 24th through the 29th. All right, you ready for the weekly topic? I think I covered everything. I showed you all this stuff. Let's get into the weekly topic. This week, what I want to teach you is the loon. You hear me talking about the loon all the time. I've never done this before, but I'm going to go ahead and give you the scientific name just for fun. They call it the Gavia emer. The Gavia emer. It's basically a diving fish bird that migrates from north to south accordingly in winter and summer. So some of these same birds that we see diving here on Fork, and in another 2 or 3 months, they leave and they go to Minnesota and they go to the Great Lakes. And this is a really awesome bird, and all he's pursuing is big bait, big fish. That's all he wants to eat. All right. Big neck bird eats big bait. All right. So first of all, let's tell you a little bit about the loon. The loon dives for an average of 3 to 5 minutes. It can actually stay under for up to 12 minutes and achieve a level of over 60 meters. That's 180 feet. Science says 180 to 250 feet is how deep that bird can dive. That's amazing. The loon is one of the better fishermen, in my opinion, like the blue heron. Very valuable to us. The loon is a big neck bird that prefers large bait fish. Accordingly, predators in the area will be larger. You follow me? All right, so I want to tell you a quick story about Jimmy Houston. When I was 4 years old, I was absolutely infatuated with Jimmy Houston, blown away. What 4-year-old sets his alarm clock for 3:30 in the morning to watch Jimmy Houston from 3:30 to 4, and then spends from 4 to 10 a.m. rewinding and rewatching, rewinding, rewatching, rewinding, rewatching. It wasn't an infatuation; it was an absolute affliction. At 4 years old, every Saturday, committed to an alarm clock to watch Jimmy Houston. Today, there's a little more in that I see. The man is a mentor. The man is a Christian. The man gives all credit where all credit's due, to the Lord our God. And today, as an adult, as a sinner saved by grace, with welling in my voice, I understand why that man became my mentor. I'm no celebrity today. I don't really have any desire to be a celebrity. But what I have found and discovered is that much like Jimmy Houston, you guys, many of you follow me, and that's God. God made Jimmy my mentor so that maybe I could just pass on some of the same. Today I live in God. Today I'm not perfect. And man, I have some great days and I have some awful days. But he's the only reason I get to fish. He is the constant blessing of rain, like Jimmy Houston professes. I got to fish his whole lifetime. What a mentor. I want to be like Jimmy. And yet here I am, McFarland fishing, 44 years later, sharing some of the same things, getting to fish for a living. Praise all be to the Lord my God. Thank you for watching that, and thank you for letting me share that, because that right there is more important than any video, anything I could ever share to anyone that's ever watched Mike McFarland talk about anything. Best thing in my life. All right. Whew. That's pretty cool. That just happened. I prayed God that would just happen. But the big neck bird, the loon, man, how can that bird actually help us as a fisherman? How can that bird help us? Well, let's tell you. All right, by keeping a close eye and paying attention to the bird, that means I got to watch it. I got to study it a little bit. I got to be patient like a deer hunter with binoculars. Maybe I got to sit off in the distance. I got to analyze those birds. I got to spend some time, a day, two, whatever. Pay attention, detail. What is the bird doing? All right. Is the bird diving on the flats? Are the loons diving on the flats? That means the bait's on the flats. So I should be fishing flats throughout the lake. If they're diving in the creek bends, I should be fishing in the creek bends, or at least looking in the creek bends. By what the bird is doing gives me a possible good idea of where I should start looking or potentially fishing. Now, is there any certain amount of time the bird has to dive and stay down, or any amount of times the bird has to dive? No. Repetitive diving is very important. Most of the time, you need to see them repetitively diving in the same spot, the same location. But one dive can be fine if he comes up with bait. If he comes up also, what I've learned, and wags his tail and poops, it's because he's making room. So again, it's not a number of dives, but it's repetitiveness, certainly. It's watching the bird. What's the bird doing? Is he finding success? Sometimes they're just hunting. It's like you and I pulling up on a main lake point, and then to a secondary point, and then to the backwater, and we change baits, and we're looking, we're searching. The loon is searching. Boy, that's a tough day. When I see the loons overall searching and hunting, we're having a tough time fishing. When I see the loons keying in on anything, I can key in on something and we catch. The loon doesn't always have to be at the location once a pattern's been set. Once something's gone for the day and I realize it's going off, I don't have to use the loon no more. I said I saw them. They were successfully diving on one of these 10-foot deep shell beds. Bam, we're going to run 10-foot shell beds the rest of the day, bird or no bird. So by paying attention in detail, watch the loon. Does he have success? If he finds the bait that he's looking for on Lake Fork, more than likely that's the bait you're looking for, because it's the bait the big bass are looking for. Again, back to Jimmy Houston. Jimmy Houston, when I was a little boy, used to say to me, say on the videos, that you'd hear, every now and then you'd hear him fishing, and apparently in this parts. Apparently I heard some funny stuff. He lived in Athens. I heard that he got a ticket or something on Lake Fork for fishing it before it ever opened. But you'd hear loon in one of his shows, and every now and then Jimmy would say, hey, when you're with a loon, you're with an apex predator. There's something big around. Meaning pike or muskie or big bass, an apex predator. So that's what that loon is offering me. Now, again, by watching the loon, I can make a decision of maybe where I should be looking with my sonars, where I should be wetting the line. I can get more. If that loon sometimes comes up and I get to see the bait. Right now I can see the color of the bait maybe before he chokes it down. He brings it up sideways. I can see the color. I can see the size, 5-inch, 7-inch, big. It really helps me now start to match the hatch and hone in. Third, it gives me confidence. I can camp in an area. I can spend more time without having to move. It's like a deer feeder. If the food's there, the birds are coming to get the food. Guess what? The bass come to get the food just the same. We get to see the bird because it's out of water. We don't see those bass coming to get it, but they're doing the same thing as the loon underneath. Okay? That's what you got to understand. That's the mentality you got to put in your head. That's how important that loon is. All right? In a summary, the loon is one of the greatest fishermen, much like the blue heron. Many of us know the blue heron is beneficial. When the blue heron's in the water like this, and the knee deep pointing in front, there's bait in front of them, there's bass in front of them. We know that. Well, and many of us use that. How many of you use the loon? Big neck bird, big bait, big bass. It's one of my best secrets on Lake Fork. Get to know the loon. Pay attention and apply accordingly. You'll find more success day in and day out. All right, one last thing on the loon. I call it the next day. If I have a great day today, the loon has kind of given it up for me and shown me where I should be fishing. I have a great day today, and tomorrow I can't find the loons for whatever reason. I can always go back to what was happening the next day, just like you would pre-fishing. Again, once I mentioned earlier, sometimes once the loons give me a good kickstart, like 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, it's giving me enough information how to apply. I don't worry about him anymore the rest of the day. He's keyed me in on what to do. So I just do that and I don't worry. And it's really ironic. Once we get a good piece of the puzzle by 9 o'clock and we go run somewhere else and we'll pull up and start fishing, we've been there for 20 minutes. Guess who shows up? Mr. Loon. That's a darn good feeling. It means I'm making the right decisions now. I begin with following the loon, and now I'm running to spots and seeing the loon come see me, making the right decisions, choosing the right spots. So that's what the loon does for Michael McFarland. That's what the loon can do for you if you'll take the time to get to know him, pay attention. It's a game changer, game-changing bird. You know, Clifford Perch is kind of a good friend of mine from the West Coast, or at least an acquaintance friend of mine, and I've heard him talk even before in tournament that one little seagull has skipped the water 100 yards from where he was fishing, and he went over and found a road and ended up catching some fish that saved the tournament. So birds are important. But when you're talking about big fish, that old loon, sure a majestic one. All right, guys, tip of the week. Tip of the week. If you're still with me, I love you. This is a long corner, and I don't have a special guest, but sometimes these corners can go at an average of 30, 45 minutes, or even an hour if we do have a special guest. I do have some guests coming and guests in mind in the future, but right now I'm just grateful if you're still watching. Tip of the week, man, when you're camping on some of these spots, that is tough. I'm going to promise you it's tough. You get used to it after a while. But the same cast, the same area, everything goes through your mind. Should we move? Should we go? Right now, again, it's ideal because they ain't even come in yet. So it's kind of like an empty restaurant. Where's the best place to see people at the front door? If they ain't inside, you stand at the front door, they're going to come to you first. But that's irrelevant. We've already talked about that. Here's a tip. What I like to do is be comfortable. Bring some extra little goodies. Bring some M&Ms. If it's cold, bring some hot chocolate. Bring something and think more like you're deer hunting. Take a little break from meal. Make 10 casts, 10 minutes or whatever. Put the rig down for a few. Have a drink. Bring a game. Whatever. But you're camping on a spot. It's timing. When they show up, you're going to get bit. Now, I promise you, the more you keep your line wet, the odds are higher. Just like playing slots. The more you pool, the more your odds are higher. That don't mean fish faster, so you can cast more, but the more it's wet, the more time it's wet, the more your odds are. But that's a tip of the week. When you're camping this type of fishing that we're doing now, make sure that you're dressed right so you're comfortable. Make sure you have some goodies and something that you need to just kind of help preoccupy that boring time. But it sure is awesome when a big old bass bites and takes you out of it. It gets exciting real quick. Doesn't it, Mr. Reese? Happened to him twice. Very bored yesterday, and all of a sudden, pow, big fish. And man, Reese was shaking. After that, Reese was fishing so fast. He's cast fishing. It was just awesome to see the adrenaline, see what happened. From sound asleep, almost just barely doing it anymore, to, oh my gosh, there are big fish in this lake. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. All right, products of the week, guys. Product or company of the week. This week, I'm going to give credit where credit's due to Santone. It's not even a bait this week. Yes, the biggest fish of the week did come on the Santone football black and blue jig. It was a good 7-pound bass. My scales weren't working dead battery, but it was a good 6 to 7 pound bass. Beautiful fish. But the credit goes to the company because every product they make is handmade right here in the United States of America. Every product they make is awesome and catches big fish. Even tournaments, don't just key in that it's just tournament stuff. But I key in with so much of their product because it's made for big fish. The shaky head, big stout hook that can handle those big fish. The jigs, as you know, I love them. I live for that jig. You'll see more and more through the season. But even if you're tournament fishing, some of the lighter stuff, the smaller fish stuff, the G.O.A.T. this is named accordingly. Ask how many fishermen get a limit with these small spinnerbaits from Santone, and then they go try and call. But it just, again, I really want to give credit where credit's due for a company that makes an incredible product right here in the USA. All the Santone products, you can be sure, are quality, and you're going to enjoy them. You're going to catch fish with them. So that kind of brings us to the closing part here, guys. Just a couple quick notes. I wanted to make sure that you guys knew that the difference between daily rundown and a corner. You've watched it. A corner is usually a lot more detail. Where a daily rundown, I'm just going to try and keep it tight and short, where you're getting basically the daily water temperature, clarity, level, a little bit of how our day was, and some tips and whatnot and what we're using. Really, and that's it in a nutshell. So, guys, it was an awesome, cold, tough, long week, but a very, very blessed week to get to do what we do. But thank you all for watching. I wish you all the very, very best fishing, and may God bless. I'm Mike McFarland, the Lake Fork Guide.